are live. Sorry we're running a little late, but here we are. It's Beth and Alex.
Hey.
And we are talking about the book Getting to Yes. Poor Alex has been trying to get me to read this for about 15 years, so he's happy I finally did it. And
you can see she has, because it has all these little tabs.
I tapped it off, such a nerd. But that way I don't forget to talk about anything on the video that I might want to talk about.
Excellent
otherwise.
decision.
Right? I know. I have some good ideas sometimes. So just dive right in. So the main premise here is, instead of you sitting on that side of the table, me sitting on this side of the table, and literally positional bargaining of who's going
I want to pay less.
I want you to pay more. So instead of doing it like that, we're going to both sit on the same side of the table and look at the problem, which I thought was actually very creative. It definitely, I think, changes your perception of if you're going to go into something like you're going to buy a house, or I like this example of buying shoes, whatever it might be. Instead of it being a give and take, for it to be more of a, how do we get to the point where we are both happy, where everybody involved is happy.
Right, and looking for a win-win instead of a win-lose. There's no winner of the negotiation, and you get what you're looking for out of it.
Right.
And that's really where interest-based negotiation really matters.
Yeah. So it's almost like it should make sense. And maybe some aspects of negotiating are like this inherently, but I don't know that everything is.
I think one of the problems is when laymen say negotiation, they're really thinking of haggling.
Maybe. I usually think, you tell me negotiate, and I just think lawyers.
No, lawyers don't negotiate. They just run up everyone's bill. Hi, lawyers.
Or I think like hostage situations, like something really, really like high stakes, intense.
But ultimately, a negotiation is just two two sides coming to an agreement.
Right. What do you want to have for dinner?
Whatever you want.
Exactly. Win-win. So, all right. So, I mean, I have all my little flags because I have what I like. Be careful on that thing. So, when he starts talking about not bargaining over positions, right? Separating the people and the interests that the people have, which I don't know why I flagged it.
Because it becomes
you separate the people from the problem.
Right, you're trying to solve a problem in a negotiation.
Right.
You're not trying to beat these other person. If you're trying to beat them, then they're trying to beat you, and you're not going to.
But it puts a lot of ego into it, right?
To give you an example, if you're arguing over the price of a car, all that really matters is the price. But if you are looking to enter a new market, say, with a partner overseas, you need to make sure whatever their share of the deal is a reason for them to go and get you the deals, and that you still make money.
Right.
Yes, there's obviously room where the position matters, but if you don't both benefit from it, congratulations, you have a deal, and no one gets any business.
Right. So that's where you're focusing on the interest and not on the position.
And the people is, you do business with people, not companies. And ultimately, people represent each other's side. And you want to make sure that in doing so, you're not making it personal. It's not about them. It's about what are we doing.
Right. So we separate the people from the problem. And then we're going to talk about, still separating people from problems. Oh, face saving and how important that is. And I feel like it's something that you appreciate more over time. It's not a young person's understanding.
Yes, the person on the other side of the table is not going to say, "You're right, I was wrong." Very rarely. So if you force them to do that, do you want to get your deal done, or do you want them to admit mistakes?
Again, I feel like there's a lot of ego that gets involved, right? Because you have to be able to put aside, like, you're right, they're wrong, but you have to let them kind of come out of it without looking like they were wrong or having to say, I was wrong. Right?
Well, you can get them to say they were wrong. It'll just cost you.
Fair. That's fair. But I thought that was an important important thing, the face saving, and the, on the other pages that take into consideration emotions, because unlike me, other people have emotions. Great. No comments. I love this. They talk about active listening and acknowledging what the other person's saying, because a lot of times we can not actively listen and you kind of hear like the first sentence and then you're thinking, how am I going to respond? Right? That's always me. I'm never listening. I'm always like, how am I going to respond?
So what you're saying is you like to engage in active listening and kind of repeat what the other person's saying so you can hear all their points of interest. What a great idea you had.
It wasn't my idea. Thank you, Roger Fisher and William Murray. So I thought that was a good one. And then, so this is the part where I really found it was like a little bit of a challenge. How do you identify the interests? And some professional groups I'm involved in, people talk about asking the questions to get the information that you need. So there's this concept of asking 5 whys.
Why?
Because you're trying to get to the heart of the matter.
Why?
Because that's how you're going to find out what somebody's interest
But why
is.
does that work?
I don't know. That's what they wrote in the book. I assume
3 whys.
It only took 3. But 5 is supposed to be the magic number. So I've always felt like, well, I might, if I'm negotiating with someone, I might not really know what their position is. I might not know why they want this or want that. But I guess you could just ask instead of trying to figure it out.
Otherwise, you're negotiating with yourself.
Right.
If you're not getting their interest, you need to negotiate with the other party.
Right. And asking why, or the corollary, why not? And that can get you pretty far. So it's neat that things I've picked up over time here and there are all in this book. But I haven't read it for 15 years.
Right. I mean, there's a reason this is like the core basics. This was This is from the Harvard Negotiation Project.
Yes.
And before we get into we really kind of got into the nitty gritty with their stuff, but essentially they've researched how do people make decisions, how do people come to agreements.
Right.
And this isn't someone's advocacy. This is based on what is the
On
research.
actual academic research. Right. So I highlighted put the problem before your answer, and which was followed by look forward and not back. So what I thought they were talking about here is, sometimes you kind of work backwards, like you already know what you're trying to get to, and you're not necessarily solving the problem of what's really there.
And some of it is both sides need to be a part of the solution. So if you just kind of step ahead of where they're going and don't let them participate in it, you might think you're skipping a step and getting to the answer, but part of the process is involving them in solving your problem.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Well, I think also there's a little challenge in understanding what the problem is.
And
Right.
how would you go about figuring out what the problem is?
Ask why.
Okay, and what else might you do?
Listen actively.
Okay. But see how that engages you in the process as opposed to me telling you.
Right. And telling us where we're going. And I thought the look forward, not back was also interesting because, a lot of times you'll say, oh, well, you never have taken out the trash in the last 5 months, and which is totally not true. Always takes out the trash. But it's like, well, you're trying to move forward. You don't want to dwell on what's been, because if I'm trying to get him to take out the trash and he hasn't been, dwelling on that isn't going to get to a solution where you now are interested and willing to take out the trash, right?
Yes, I hear you.
Funny. All right, let's see, more on the method.
I think, as you're going through and flagging specifics, I think the most important thing is, the main takeaway you start with is figure out what your interests are, because often they're not in conflict. I want to pay more, you want to pay less, or things like that. That's a conflict and you can't solve that, but certain things are a win-win. For example, I'm in negotiations with a radio station about doing an event.
Okay.
Now, I could go and just say, okay, I want to do everything you want, but pay 30% less. And okay, we'd settle on 10% less, And
in the middle somewhere.
You know what'll happen the next time we play this game? He'll come in with a bid 20% higher. I'll negotiate it down, and then nobody wins.
Right.
But often there are things that are of value to me that don't cost them anything.
Okay.
When we were a sponsor at Riptide, we wanted to be on the Jumbotron. It doesn't cost them anything to add the
right,
Jumbotron.
They're already there. They're already putting.
Whether they do the 5 minutes before the act or 5 minutes and 30 seconds before the act and include us really had no bearing on their show.
Right.
But it meant a lot to us because that was our level of exposure. So rather than saying, okay, but we're going to pay less for the show, we said, okay, give us more of these Jumbotron slots, or put us in a more prime location, or angle our tent slightly so that we occupy more sidewalk space. All things that are of extreme value to us, but don't cost them anything. Whereas if I ask them to collect less money, that's taking money out of their pocket.
Right.
So I often find
win-win.
that, right, so if your goal is, I want someone to pay me $5,000 for the service, and their goal is asking for the same service for $4,000, just leaves you feeling like you're being
taken advantage of, yeah.
But if they say, no, I love that, $5,000, can you also do this, this, and this? And you're like, of course I can do that. Now I've got $8,000 worth of value, which is what I wanted.
Right.
And you got your $5,000, which you asked for, and now it's a win-win.
Right. That makes sense. Well, and it's interesting, they talk about brainstorming, right? Like both sides brainstorming for a solution, which in some ways is almost counterintuitive, because if we're, pitted against each other in negotiation, and now we're saying, well, why don't we come up with some other ideas? They say, like, don't edit, don't criticize, just start throwing out ideas, no matter how maybe strange or inappropriate or not helpful or whatever it might be. Just start coming up with the solutions and see what happens as a result of that. So, I think it's very creative, because if you kind of step back, so what everybody's interested in, and you start brainstorming, how can we get these two things to happen simultaneously, that you can just come up with some creative solutions.
And there's not always, but often, and one, the brainstorming will also help you discover unreferred interests. It also depends. Are you negotiating for yourself, or are you an agent?
Right, that also will.
Because if you're negotiating with the principal, it's a different situation. If I'm the realtor and you're trying to buy a house from me, well, ultimately the price is what my client cares about, but I care about how quickly can you close with little aggravation. So
it's true.
If I sell that, if you pay $10,000 less, but which affects my commission by $600, but you're not going to send me on a 12-hour goose chase to get something done, I might be more inclined to recommend we take you because the deal's going to get done. I'm still looking at my client's best interest, but I'm also getting my interest. And that's where the interests may not always align. And the brainstorming is super powerful because it helps you figure out together new ideas that might satisfy both.
I think it also lets you know when something that you want is, and the way that you're proposing it is maybe completely one-sided. And it'll make you think about that. Like, they gave a lot of examples of Middle East peace negotiations, where it's like, I want one country to totally back off and leave our land, blah, blah, blah. And it takes someone coming in and saying, what do you think happens when they go back to their side and they say, listen, guys, we have no promises of anything that we want, but we're just going to give them everything. Do you think that's going to happen? No, because you're not being, a reasonable member of that negotiation. And now you have to acknowledge, like, okay, I'm being a little unreasonable. Yes, I have to, come up with a more creative solution so that everybody can get what they need and go back to their people and say, okay, look, we got X, Y, Z. So it might not be how you start from the onset of the headbutting, but you can come up with more creative ways to get everyone what they want, maybe in a method that wasn't what anyone thought of in the first place. That was vague enough. Can we talk about BATNA?
Sure. What would you like to discuss about the BATNA?
So, first off, what's a BATNA? It's a weird
Excellent
word,
question.
right? BATNA, best alternative to a negotiated agreement.
Fancy way of saying what happens if we walk.
Right. So the example they give is, if you're trying to sell your family home, and they're like, well, maybe we can sell it for $100,000, and somebody else is like, but I love this house, we can't sell it for less than 140,000. And someone said, no, we've been here for 20 years. Getting less than 200,000 is insulting, and we absolutely can't sell for less than that. But that's not really your BATNA, right? That's like an artificial minimum that you're trying to set.
Right. So the concept of a BATNA is really, it's one of the key ones in there, and it's not just about the acronym. It's you need to know what happens if you walk, and because if a deal is on the table that's better than what you have if you walk, you're better off taking the deal. So that's where you sometimes get into these sales gamesmanship, but ultimately, if you can figure out what your opponent's BATNA is, you can force their hand.
Okay.
Because this is where it's in a positional thing. If I know you're trying to sell something and I know it sells on eBay for 10 grand.
Yeah. Okay. 10 grand on eBay.
$100 on eBay.
There you go. It's more reasonable.
Take it up a business to a consumer. I know you can sell this on eBay this afternoon for $100.
Okay.
But I want it now.
Okay.
I know that I can buy it in a store for $300. So any deal under $300 is good for me. Any deal over 100 is for you. So now we're in a positional negotiation.
Right.
If you don't know that it's 300, you're inclined to take a 150.
Yeah.
You know I'm going to pay 250 because I still come out ahead. Knowing your opponent's BATNA helps you position yourself. It also lets you know when you need to make more concessions or not. Because as long as you're talking in realms of things that are above someone's BATNA or below, depending on which side they're on, they're kind of, your negotiation's not necessarily over, but you weaken the walk away threat. Because positional negotiators like to walk away. And that's really powerful.
Takeaway?
The takeaway is a sales thing.
Right.
And it's the same thing, right? Like, I'm leaving, okay. And then if I know I put a deal on the table for you that's better than your BATNA and I walk away, that's a very powerful move.
Right. So in the example they were giving, like, you have to sell your house, and you're like, well, I want 200,000 because it's so sentimental to us, or we're not taking any deal. But if you need to sell, that's not your BATNA, right? Your BATNA is whatever, some other calculation. If it's, what you need to buy another house or what have you.
But the BATNA is also a fallback.
Right.
It's the other side has more bargaining power than you. So you need to have a deal, but absolutely know where you're better off walking away with no deal.
Right.
And that'll at least protect you from getting bullied.
Right. So
it's been 15 years since I read this book, but that's what I remember. I don't remember exactly how every acronym plays,
right,
but that's
right.
really the key to it.
Do you remember like the tripwire?
No.
Okay. So it says your BATNA is your true measure by which you should judge any proposed agreement. You may want another test as well, in order to give you an early warning that the content of a possible agreement is beginning to run the risk of being too unattractive. You have a tripwire, so it's almost like another, like gives you a little margin where like I'm starting to get close to where.
Right. This
hitting
whole
my BATNA.
situation is when you're dealing with someone who's on the other side who's more powerful than you and in a positional negotiation.
Yes.
So you want to set up a bunch of things that blow up the deal so that you don't get, like I said, like the scenario where you have to take anything over $100.
Right.
You want to try to blow up the conversation when it's hitting 150 so that I don't keep dropping down.
Right.
And that's it. It's a positional thing. It's like, oh, well, if that happens, I'm just going to go here and do this. I'd rather make less and feed my ego or whatever nonsense you're doing to try to express a stronger BATNA.
Right. And this whole section is talking about, when you're the little guy and you're trying to negotiate with somebody who's much more powerful. In a whole section where he talks about negotiation jujitsu, which I just I like the sound of it. And they're saying, like, if someone comes at you strong, you don't necessarily want to push back strong, especially if they have more power than you, more clout, and they're in a better position. A lot of these things. So some of the stuff they talk about is like, don't attack their position, look behind it.
Do you know what my favorite jiu-jitsu move is?
What?
What do you think is fair?
You're like really reframing.
But I reorient everyone. I'm like, what do you want? I said I want a fair deal, which is true. But I'm usually not trying to take advantage of someone, but by establishing letting them define what's fair. It frames them and it kind of jujitsus them into a certain area that's around that fairness thing.
Another thing to talk about is don't defend your ideas, invite criticism and advice, which is actually quite brilliant because now you're getting the input from the other side of what they want, right? And you can let them feel like they're criticizing you. And this is like a little bit more of that, how does the ego play into it? But if you come out and you're like, here's my proposal, what do you think? Give me your criticisms. Well, now it's not, well, I'm going to come in and attack you with it. It's, no, I'm inviting it. Like, come, tell me what you think is wrong here. Tell me what you think is a problem. What do you think we can do better? So it almost like takes their attack and just internalizes it almost, so that it's part of the agreement that you're coming up with.
And it lets everyone else know that you're working together to solve a problem.
And then I thought, recast an attack on you as an attack on the problem. And I think, whenever you're dealing with negotiations, when it gets really personal, I think that's the hardest thing to deal with, is the not getting emotional, not getting upset, not taking the attack as attack on you. It's like, well, no, we're here, we're trying to work something out. It's going to be an attack on the problem. Even if it's kind of presented as an attack on you, you have to step back and say, no, it's not. We're talking about the problem. It's not me, which is hard. I think it's hard. Maybe you don't think it's hard. I think it's hard. You get a little defensive sometimes.
Right. You have to remember that everything is about the position, about the items being negotiated, not the people involved.
Right. I had one more flag. Oh, common tricky tactics. And what I loved about this section is that so much of it reflected back on last month's book, Influence. It was like they fit together very nicely.
There's a reason we read these back to back in business school.
Oh, did you? Did I get the right order? Did I do it backwards?
I don't remember.
You don't remember? Okay.
We'll not discuss how long ago that was.
So they talk about like psychological warfare, and he used that. Cialdini used that in Influence. So I thought that was super cool. So they're saying deliberate deceptions. These are some tactics that people can use to kind of be a little underhanded when you're negotiating. Phony facts. Can we just call that fake news? So is that just like an ongoing, I don't want to get too political, but is that an ongoing negotiation between Trump and media?
Yeah, it is. I mean, ultimately...
I'm not saying which side is creating the fake news, but...
The White House's goal is to... that's called working the refs, is that negotiation style.
Okay, so it's not quite phony facts?
Phony facts are stuff that's not provable to lie. I'm sure they give you the little, what did they do?
They said, yeah.
The little old lady from Pasadena line?
Yes.
Right? Like, you say something that's totally ridiculous and obviously not true. But, you brought up the false news, and that's working the refs. I don't know if that's in there. But one of the things with working the ref is you get, when there's someone else who's trying to, when someone is supposed to be the arbiter, you make it really painful for them to come down against you. And it's really like, the term comes from sports, where the coach goes and yells at a ref early on about an ambiguous call, backs off before getting a flag, but by attacking the ref thinks twice the next time they call their way against it.
Gotcha, because now you're already like a little gun shy almost.
Right, so what does Trump do with his fake news attack? The media knows that he's going to call them out on the slightest misstep, so now they get more apprehensive about reporting negative things. So that's where
you hope anyway. Ambiguous authority. So, if you're in business, you maybe are, you're talking to someone, you're trying to work out a deal, and you find out, oh crap, they're not even the one who has the authority to make this decision in the end anyway. Then the person you're talking to might have acted like they were. Right?
So when you buy a car, I have to check with the manager. That's
check with my wife.
That's the ambiguous. A friend of mine, this was his father's technique. He owned a large real estate development on the East Coast. His business cards all said vice president. There's no one else in the company. He owned it. They said vice president. And why? He would take the negotiation to a certain point, and then he had the ability to back off by saying, I need to check with the boss. Or he said, it's not really my money, it's my wife's. Right. So you guys negotiate, you get to here, and then that last positional is, well, the manager said no to this, can we still do it? And it gets you a second bite at the apple by not being able to say yes.
Gotcha.
So that's really, there's probably a whole bunch of games in there.
Yeah, there's a few others. Stressful situations. They give the example of like, you're sitting and negotiating, and you put somebody in like a really sunny spot, so it's really uncomfortable, or like you give them a really crappy chair to sit in, where you're like physically making this situation stressful on them.
You keep putting water out at a table, and no one wants to show weakness going to a bathroom break.
Oh, Okay. Is that a weakness? You have to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, anytime you're showing it attacks someone's false machismo, that idea that they're not as tough as you. It's totally a guy thing.
Personal attacks.
But negotiating over drinks.
Like, that's an ugly shirt, right? You show off to something like, oh.
Well, this isn't the game. You're in a different book. But
that's negging.
But
I'm not trying to pick you up. I already picked you up. But if you're, trying to negotiate something as being high end, and you're like, oh God, where did you get that? The thrift store? Like, that's
right. And now you're more inclined to overpay because you're trying to show them you can.
Right. There's some psychological stuff in there. Yeah, it's
right.
Good. Threats. Well, that's pretty on the nose, right? It's a type of pressure. You're going to threaten something. Here, hostage negotiation. If you don't give us what we want, we will start killing hostages.
I don't remember if it's getting to yes or getting past no, but there's the very aggressive technique of attacking someone's BATNA. For example, if your alternative is, well, I know I can just go and dump this on eBay for $100, and your response is, yeah, I'm going to go flood eBay with 100 fake orders just to blow up your ability to do it. I've attacked your BATNA, and if I know you're desperate to make a sale, now your BATNA is 0. Now you're going to take it below 100.
Got it.
But it's a super aggressive technique because it usually triggers people to respond. Because sometimes people will walk away from a deal that's above their BATNA because they're insulted. And that's where separating the people from the problem is so important.
And they talk about the good guy, bad guy routine.
No one ever runs good cop, bad cop.
No. I like that one with your kids, right? Or with our kids, I guess I should say, not your kids.
Thanks. It's fine with me, but wait till your mother gets home.
Just wait till your mother gets home. Yeah. Never do that.
No, but we've all done that. We've all, wanting to make the deal, we've all said, look, I would totally do this, but the owner won't. It will never happen. Or he's going crazy. How do we get him an answer? That's kind of important.
Okay, and then they talk about positional pressure tactics. So this is where you're trying to get out of this, win-win and try to push it more into this me against you. So one of them is refusing to negotiate. The classic "I'll see you in court" kind of a thing. That was one example that they gave. Extreme demands. So like, okay, I put my house on the market. I know the houses in the area will sell for, some comps are $300,000. But I'm going to go in and I'm going to offer $50,000. Like something really absurdly low. And that's super powerful. We talked about anchoring last time, right? So even if you know intellectually, like, oh, the house isn't going to sell for $50,000, that's insane. But if everything really should sell for $300,000, am I more likely to sell it for $250,000 now? Maybe influence. He said that'll bring you down just by anchoring you to that lower.
It also
point.
will pull you out of a creative problem solving and into the, oh shit, I'm here discussing a $75,000 offer. And you've already come here, particularly if I've combined this with other tactics, like I've made you drive 2 hours to meet with me.
All right, so now I've wasted my time. Now I'm getting lowballed. Now I'm annoyed. And
Walmart used to do a thing where they would never allow anyone to take buyers from Walmart can't be taken out to lunch. You would have to come to Bentonville. You would get put in a room. There were no windows in the room. It was a very small and comfortable room. You would come in.
Comfortable chair and a lot of water and no bathroom.
But it was all about making sure, officially, why do you not want? If a vendor takes me out to lunch, it's not harmless. It triggers reciprocity. It makes me likely to overspend the company's money. There's a lot of removing that, but it also put whichever person came to make the sale into a, hi, Bree.
And then it's funny, there don't be a victim. It's kind of the same as it was in influence. Once you see one of these tactics being used, you acknowledge it. Sometimes you can even call them out on it. It really it really takes away its impact that it's going to have, because now you know what they're up to. And just by recognizing it and acknowledging it, whether to yourself or to them, now you're in a better position.
And I will tell you, any businessman worth their salt has read this. They've read influence.
I am now officially worth my salt.
No, but if you're not, you call people out on this sort of stuff, and they've all learned it. If they haven't read this at a business school level, they've read sales training that's based on it. Like these two are the classic academic papers that, books about the academic papers on.
Right.
There's nothing really shocking there. But we had this happen in negotiation, again, with the radio station came. It's like, well, if you do one, it's this. But if you commit to all three, it's this much less. And it's all a joke because he knew we wanted to do all three. We knew he wanted to do his deal. He's there with some of the other people on the team, and we're even teasing him. He's like, I like how you anchored us here, and then immediately came here with the first concession. He's like, oh, you like how I did that? And we were joking about it, but we all know in the end, we're there. What do we want? What do you want? You're a sales rep for the company. You're looking to get a fair price and to make the sale. We're looking to get as much value as possible. I can get lots of value adds out of you that don't cost you anything and won't make you look bad. And that's really how you creatively problem solve. Because sometimes you'll see that situation. If your whole goal of the sales rep is, I can sell this for no fewer than $1,000 and I need to make the sale, you're willing to give me everything that's not nailed down to make that sale. So I can either try to bully you into giving me $900, which is get you in trouble, or I can look for $4,000 in value adds and you don't care as long as you hit $1,000. That's knowing your interest. Knowing you need to get it over $1,000 helps me dramatically.
But what's interesting about that is, as somebody who's going to the table as a negotiator in any kind of, especially like a sales situation like this, if I know there are things that are relatively easy for me to give to a client, that's huge. It's a huge value add where if they're like, well, this is too much, I'm not sure about this. And you're like, well, what if I throw in X? And if I have a couple of these, that might be a way to entice them, to make them feel like they're getting a whole lot of something they want, and it doesn't necessarily run up my costs. Or like you said before, leave me feeling like, well, now they got me to discount, $1,000, and now I'm unhappy. But it's that creative win-win where you're getting something good. I'm giving you something that I can relatively easily or cheaply or quickly give you, and everybody's really happy as a result.
The thing to remember is if both sides don't have something the other side wants, you're not negotiating. So, you want to always avoid these adversarial situations. You want to figure out, what do you actually want? You don't actually want this at the lowest price. You want a high ROI set of services. You do have this as an accountant, right? If I'm negotiating over price with a tax return, then I'm haggling with you and my BATNA is H&R Block.
Right.
If I'm coming to you as a financial advisor, my BATNA is my commission-based type stress sales rep is going to sell it to me, or you who's on my side. I'd rather work with you.
Right.
But you need to give me a package that makes sense.
Correct.
And sometimes my thing is knowing. Maybe you'll have some clients. Some clients are worried about what their hourly rate is and they want to compare it. Right. Others want to know flat out. They don't care what it is. They just want to know what it is. Surprise bills scare certain people. And really, it all depends on how your cash flow situation. Are you worried about your downside risk or your upside? And you can negotiate accordingly.
Right.
Like I have vendors who come in, and the ones that don't get a deal are the ones who won't hear my interest because I'm up front. I'm like, I have a budget of X to spend in this area. I want a deal that makes sense. I'm not interested in you offering me, but I can give you all this more for twice that. I'm like, that's wonderful. This is my budget. I'm not negotiating on price. I'm negotiating on level of service.
Right. What am I getting?
And the ones who don't get that and want to see like, well, I'll do nothing you want, but I'll give you it for 20% less. I'm like, I'm also not interested. I don't care that I save money because I don't have value.
Here's something you don't want. I'll give it to you for a great price.
But it happens all the time.
It does happen all the time.
Because they don't listen.
Yeah, it's true. Active listening.
Or passive listening. Fucking listen.
Any listening.
I cursed. My bad.
You're gonna get us kicked off.
Totally.
All right.
We got kissed off Facebook.
It's been a half an hour anyway. I think we got through this whole book. This is actually, if you didn't read it, it's a fast book. I'm gonna be totally honest and admit I didn't start reading it until yesterday. I thought our meeting was next week, and I was like, oh shoot, that's May 1st. It's today. So it's super fast. I read through this, and I'm not really even a fast reader, so it's fast. It's a great book.
Do you count the 15 years I've been trying to get you to read it, or just the 2 hours you sat there with the book?
Just the 2 hours.
Okay.
And I even take a little longer because I have all my pretty flags. But that's it for Getting to Yes. Fantastic book. Thrilled I read it. It gave me a lot to think about.
And if you love it, there is a sequel, Getting Past No. Like many sequels, it's not as good as the original, but it's still chock full.
Maybe we'll put that on next year's. But do you know what we're reading next month?
What? What do we read next month?
And I don't think you've read this.
Oh, no.
So I'll buy the book and you can steal it
I'm
from
excited.
me. Traction.
What is Traction?
It's a book. You have to read it. I don't even know
This
who
is
it's
like a
by.
Time Life commercial? Wait, there's more.
No, there's not more. But if I go on Amazon, I can even tell you who the author is. There's a list. I have the list posted of what every month for the whole year is traction. It's very exciting. I don't think I spelled it right. I spelled traction.
TRACTION.
No, whatever. Traction. Worked. Hold on. We're getting there. No, all right, not happening. Okay, go find it. It's called Traction.
There'll be a link on the Facebook
There
page.
is a link. Go get it. Go read it. And the next meeting is May 29th. Should be the next one. All right. So thank you everyone who watched.
So you can right after Memorial Day. So you've got your full day at the beach to read your Traction.
Cool. That'll be me. Getting a little margarita and reading Traction. All right. Thanks, guys.